and welcome to Let's Will Speak. Today is Wednesday, May 23rd, and this is episode 221. I had to check. Did you see that? Yes, it is in fact May 23rd. Okay. I am Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. This week's episode will have stuff. It'll have knitting. It'll have a tiny bit of board game talk. We've recently tried two very small footprint game. Well, one of them is not the smallest footprint, but two small box games that I think that I thought maybe people would find helpful for summer traveling. So I will talk about those. I'll probably do that at the end for folks who are not interested. But I'll talk about some knitting. I don't have any spinning to show you because I have two bigger projects that are in progress. And then, yeah, we'll just chat a little bit first. Okay, so what do we have to chat about? Did I even write down the things I was going to talk about? I did, but not very efficiently. Okay, so let's start with this. Oh my gosh, Me Made May. By the way, I'm wearing my second painted portrait dress. This is a pattern by Anne-Marie Horner. If you are watching the episode on iTunes, I apologize for the poor video quality. If you would like better video quality, you can watch the episodes on YouTube. They allow me to upload a much better quality video file. But if you don't mind, and if you're just like listening as you drive somewhere, what have you. But I did not include in my bonus episode for the grading of this painted portrait dress by Anne-Marie Horner. So if you are an iTunes subscriber and that's the only way you get updates, you can check that out on my YouTube channel. It'll be in the normal section, but it's also in a playlist section where I've put like the bonus episodes together. So there's like a bread one and like an intro to who I am one and some other stuff. A bicycle one. The bicycle one is a thing. So you can find those on the playlist on the YouTube channel. Okay, so Me Made May, y'all. Are you following his hashtag on Instagram? I must tell you, if you're not on Instagram, I understand. Social media. I feel you. But if you have room in your life for a very easy to curate feed, like if you have family that you don't really necessarily want to hear from, just don't tell them you have an Instagram account. If you have coworkers that you're like, just don't tell them you have an Instagram account, right? Just on the down low. But it is a great place. It usually tends to be a very positive vibe. Occasionally somebody will do something crazy, but boy, it is once in a blue moon. And now they've just added mute, so if you have somebody that you do care about, you just don't really want to tell them that you don't want to hear from them. Because they harsh your buzz of life. But anyway, that's totally an ad for Instagram, which I am in no way paid by. But the whole point of that was to say that one of the useful things is that you can follow certain hashtags. I don't really follow many hashtags, but Me Made May is such a good one. Lots and lots and lots of folks out there sewing their own clothes. Not just sewing. There's knitting, there's weaving, but lots of sewing, it seems to be. And I love how many knitters are also sewists. It's very exciting to me to see that there's that much crossover, which I think is super fun. So anyway, it's so very inspiring. It's also inspiring that there are, several different, I shouldn't say several, that's a dumb thing to say. There are lots of different ages of women participating. It does tend to be, I would say, a 45 and under-ish is the vast majority of people, so get on there. And there are lots of different body sizes. Next year I am participating. This year I didn't feel like I had enough at the beginning of the challenge to really participate. But next year I'm going to really make a concerted effort to participate in Me Made May. If nothing else, I'm not the greatest sewist in the world, but if nothing else, just to add a big body in there is super helpful, I think. So I'm going to try to do that next year. So I have goals. Maybe we need something in the meantime, like We Made Wednesday. Can we do that? So I can like gear up a little bit. I don't know, but it's so fun. I'm kind of sad that May is almost over. I know as the month winds down, people get like a little bit like, okay, I'm sick of taking pictures of myself now. I get it. But it's been very inspiring, and I am thankful to everybody who's participated. And next year I'm going to try not to be a stalker. I feel like, in fact, the reason I started on this #1 sewing thing, in part, was because of Me Made May. I can't remember exactly when I started, but I know it was not long before SSK, so, which is in July. So I'm thinking it might have had something to do with that. So anyway, it's been very inspiring. Yay! Curvy Sewing Collective just had a pattern smackdown. What do they call them? It's not pattern roundup. Anyways, they did one about panty patterns, which I thought was super fun. I do want to sew my own underpants one day. It's kind of a hard one to put into the lineup because I do have commercially available underpants that I find to be satisfactory. And to make your own underpants, unless you're like a super bargain fabric hunter, which I'm not, is not that expensive, especially when you have a bottom that requires a lot of fabric area to cover it. So for example, my size is usually a ½ yard. Now I've never made them, so maybe that's just like to get the length, and maybe you could really like in a yard get 3 pairs out, because that's often the case with layouts and things. But considering most cotton spandex knits are like in the $15-ish range, it's kind of like, plus you need elastics or you need extra fabric to do like bindings. But it is something I want to do just for the challenge of it. I just haven't made space for it yet, but it is on my list of things to do. So that's been, but anyway, yay Me Made May. That was a bit of a tangent, but I've been finding it very interesting and inspiring. So yay. The other thing, what else did we talk about? So I did that. Oh my gosh. This is like the non-organic list of things to talk about. Like none of these things flow in together. Sorry. The other thing that happened this week, I tell you, I've not been getting a lot of knitting done. And it's not because I don't necessarily have time. It's just I've not been super motivated. I have to admit it. Like I am motivated to finish a few things, but I tell you, I get them out with good intentions and then I work on a few rows of them, and then like 10 minutes later I find that I'm looking at tents. And I do mean tents, like camping tents. I don't need a tent. Clearly I need a tent because I need to go to Michigan's Fiberfest, and I need to camp there to justify going, and I need to take a class. So I need to stay there for like 3 days, and so I definitely need a smaller tent to camp in. Because I need one to camp in for next year's Maryland Sheep and Wool. Obviously. And I have a tent, but it's far too large for just me, and that would just be ridiculous. So clearly, I need another tent. Whatever. So anyway, so I find myself knitting for a little bit, and then like again just getting super distracted and being like, oh, what is this Marmot 4-person limestone tent about? What is its center height clearance? What is its footprint space? How does that compare to the Eureka Sweet Dreams 2-person tent? Can I really fit in a 4-foot tall tent? I don't think so. I don't think I'm made to bend over for that long anymore, if I ever was. My back is kind of dodgy sometimes. So then I'm all like, maybe I need to do more yoga to get my back in better shape so that I can, in fact, fit in the 4-foot tall, I'm 5'8", or the 4-foot tall clearance tent, because it would be a very small footprint and be very easy for me to put up by myself because it's only 4 feet tall. Really? Settle way down. Okay, now there's a transition. So then that transitions into what I'm listening to. So I actually don't have anything profound by any stretch of the imagination to say about this book, but I just wanted to bring it to the attention of some folks. I'm not talking to you. I don't mean you specifically, I promise. But I had never heard of it. It's a book called Moody Bitches, and it's by Julie Holland. And the subtitle is like the truth about the drugs you're taking, the sleep you're not getting, and the sleep you're not sleeping. It's something that, anyway, it's all about women and hormones, which I really don't know anything about. I hate to admit it. Now, I will say I'm only 2 chapters into this book, and I'm not sure that I am like on the train of this author. Like, for example, I do think she presents some things without evidence. And so I'm not sure if there is evidence out there or if it is just like her personal theory of why we have evolved with the hormones that we have and why they do the things they do. But if nothing else, I find it to have been an interesting, it's brought things to my mind to think about that I would not have thought about before. So she talks a lot about medication, and and usually these are like psychiatric medications, like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications and things of that nature. By extent, she talks a little bit about our current U.S. medical system and our propensity for prescribing medications for things before we try to find out any other maybe causes of the issue or potential solutions to the issue. And then she goes on to talk about a lot about hormones, and primarily female hormones. And she has this whole thing again where she talks about like what I'm assuming is her theory of why we have the hormonal fluxes in our cycles that we do, and what they mean and what they could have inspired us to do. Well, that they do still inspire us to do. And again, I take that all with a grain of salt. It's not presented with footnotes or any sort of like other supporting evidence. That's right. But I am finding it interesting, if nothing else. So I'm just listening to the audio version, and I thought I would just put it out there if that is something that you are also interested in learning more about. So again, it's called Moody Bitches, and it's by Julie Holland. And then, while not directly related, we'll go from hormones to enzymes. Right? Those are small and biological. That's like a thing, right? So then the other thing I want to talk about today is I made a supreme cooking blunder. Supreme. Traditionally, I'm a pretty good cook. Like, I'm a fat lady with cause. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not like, how did she get that way? You're like, okay, this food's pretty tasty. I get it. That's actually not that, whatever. That was totally not PC, but whatever. I'm usually a fairly good cook. I am not a fancy cook. I am a traditional, like, you know, I try to branch out. My family is like, no, go back in your Midwestern cage and continue to cook it this way. So I am adventurous at heart, but I rarely get to explore fun new things in my cooking life because the people I live with are uber boring, but I love them and stuff. In case I'm dead one day and you're watching this, I love you. But you do need to learn how to eat some different things, family. Anyway, that's an aside of another flavor. But I feel like I'm typically a fairly good cook. You know, sometimes you cook stuff, and usually my biggest problem is that it doesn't taste as good as I think it should because of how much work it took. Do you know what I mean? Like, other people eating it are like, oh, this is very good, thank you. But I'm like, dude, I understand that that took like 5 hours to make, and therefore it does not have 5 hours of flavor in it. You know what I mean? But this weekend, I did something dumb. So we have in our kind of group of friends that come over like maybe once a month, and we maybe all play a board game or just sit around and chew the fat, whatever. But in that group of friends, we have some dietary restrictions. We have a gluten-free, we have 2 dairy-frees and a vegetarian. So basically, usually when I'm cooking for them, I'm cooking vegan gluten-free, which is not a problem. Like, that's not a problem, except for the fact that that also has to overlap with my only meat and gluten eating family. And there's a very small intersection. But this time we didn't have a vegetarian. So we were just like gluten and dairy free, which is a much easier one to intersect with my family. So I decided that I would do like a Kahlua pork, like a braised smoked pork shoulder. And I was all excited about it. And then it had, and then we're gonna do like the, or then I did like a lime, what's that called? Lime cilantro, something else was in it, but now I can't remember. Jalapeno coleslaw. So it was like this, like kind of, it wasn't vinegary because it was lime juice, but it was a like a tart, yummy, crunchy thing to go with like this smoky pork. I thought, oh, that'll be so yummy. And I did like some cilantro rice for people who cilantro rice for people who don't. For my family, who I knew would not eat the cabbage product. But I thought this is gonna be so good. And then it had like a pineapple jalapeno salsa that was an accompaniment to the pork. And I thought, oh, that'll be so good. And like I can get all the crunchy veggies in that I like so much. And like, you know, it'll be great. So I do it all up and do it in the pressure cooker, which was another factor, was like making sure that it wasn't gonna heat my house up to like 8 million degrees. So I did it in the pressure. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And so I like shredded it all up and got ready. And then we from the from the pineapple jalapeno salsa stuff, we had, and by the way, it's not a real salsa in like the sauce form of salsa. But we had like extra pineapple juice that had come off of all the pineapple that we chopped up. And I thought, oh, I'll just like throw that into the pork and that'll help sweeten it up a little bit. And that'll be a nice contrast to the like sour of that and the this of this. And the, ooh, that'll be nice. Do you know what I'm going to say? You do, don't you? You're like, I know what you are about to say. I should have known. I even thought briefly before I did it, I wonder if this could be a problem. Dump. Pineapple, right? Fresh pineapple has those enzymes in it that actually eat your own face when you're eating it. Like, you know that, right? Like, you know, if you eat the fresh pineapple and you go a little crazy because it's so mega delicious and the most perfect thing ever in the world to eat. And then like you eat maybe more than is reasonable for a human to eat of it. And then your mouth feels like it's been, like you ate the outside of the pineapple. That's what your mouth feels like. This is, it contains this enzyme that breaks down your mouth and pork. Duh. So I throw that in and then everybody gets here and then we have like, you know, there's like an hour of like people getting in and settling down. And then I'm like, oh yeah, there's all that stuff in there. Just help yourselves. And so a couple people get their stuff and we're playing a game and I'm not really ready to eat yet. So they're like eating and they're being very pleasant. And then I'm like, okay, finally it's time for me to eat. And I go in and I'm like, what is this? My lovely, smoky, luscious pork roast that's all yummied up is literally like pate. It's half a step away from pate. What? And at first I'm like, what is wrong with this? Sorry. My street is literally an eighth of a mile long, maybe. People love to ride their motorcycles at my street super fast and super loud. Anyway, sorry. So I'm like all excited to get it on the pork on my, and I'm like, it looked a little funny when I put it on there, but I thought, oh, it's just, you know, like I've gotten a piece that's a little bit more shredded up than the others. And so then I'm like, I eat a bite and I'm like, what is wrong with this pork? And then I'm like, what? I didn't cook it in a reasonable amount of time. I did it and it's a recipe in America's Test Kitchen, so I trust them. And I'm like, what is wrong with this? What is this about? And then everybody else is like, yeah, I thought the texture was a little strange. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's terrible. Oh my gosh, I won't eat this. Because it's just like granular almost. Like it's weird and creepy. So then it like occurs to me in this giant flash. Duh. So, my summer advice to you is, don't be clever and put pineapple juice in any protein products. What was I thinking? This is what happens when you try to be too fancy. That's what happens. My people don't cook with pineapple. I'm not from pineapple worlds. Why did I think I could do that? Anyway. So sometimes I like to make sure you know that I screw stuff up bad too. Okay? You're not alone. Don't worry. Instagram is not a real reflection of everybody's life. Some of us make pate pork and it's horrible. And then we are upset with ourselves for many hours afterwards. then let's talk about knitting. Right. Disjuncted podcast. It's a lot of different things to talk about, but there is no overlying theme. Let's talk about knitting. Okay, so things that you've already seen. I have been working on my Canyonlands shawl. I have this stinking much yarn left, and I've had this much yarn left forever. Like, I started with this much yarn, and yet I still have this much yarn left. It's like 1.2 ounces, and it is never going away. I know I should be happy that I'm blessed with the wealth of the never-ending yarn ball, but I'm not. So anyway, this is the Canyonlands shawl, and I apologize, I'm trying to see who it is by so that I can give you that information, and I am being a little slow about it. But it is by Teasdale. Excuse me. And it is specifically written either for handspun or like, it would be nice in Noro or anything that has longer stripes of color in it. Let me see if I can get to, hi, it's in progress. So it's on a needle. There it is so far. Right? How much do you love this stripe right here? This is the reason for the whole shawl, apparently, is that stripe. Because that is super exciting. Right. It's gorgeous. Woo, that's so fun, right? So this is a very simple pattern. You have 3 stitch markers on, and you do the same thing for 6 rows. And then you do a different thing on the 7th row. And all those things are very easy. And you get this fun little chevron look on the edge of your shawl. Right? In a big plain section at the bottom. But it's so cute, and it adds like a nice little amount of motion to it. I think it highlights the fact that your yarn is striping. This is not, this is just 2 different bumps of yarn that I thought were complementary. One is by Spun Right Round, and one is by Joanna Spring, Knitspin Farm. So I've just spun them as they were in the braid and then plied them together. So, yeah. Because I spun them like without splitting them at all, those sections of color are longer. So even though you have overlap of different bumps, it still has a pretty good length of color repeat. So while definitely not a true self-striping yarn, because it is a 2-ply marl, you get the same effect, kind of. I totally dig it. And it is a very pleasant knit. It is very, like I said, it's very television friendly, very children's sports ball friendly. Good thing. So then the next thing I have to show you is my sweater, which is written by Ysolda Teague. It's the Ishnana sweater. And I'm knitting mine with Quince and Company Finch in the Carrie colorway. Carrie's yellow, I apologize. So here we are, we're at right in the back, we're at the cable bit. You'll see my super fancy cable needle is in fact a glove needle from KnitPicks. I have a beautiful cable ring from Leslie Wind, and I use that quite a bit too, but I also have just a plain old glove needle, and I like this because it's a bamboo needle or a wooden needle, so it really grabs onto the stitches. And it's not such a long needle that it gets in the way. It's fairly compact still. And then I can remember to just jab it into my knitting and have it on hand. But so there's the back center panel. The pattern is written to be knit flat from the bottom up. It has a set-in sleeve, which you then work from the top down in the round. However, I am knitting mine to be steeked. So I will just cut mine so that I get all of this stuff in knitting versus having to purl back, because on my size, the row is like 350 stitches or something. That's a lot of purling. That is not fun for me. Yeah, 354. So with the steek. So yeah, I'm making that, and then I will probably also steek the armholes. I used to be hesitant to do that for some reason. Like I felt like it was a bother, but it's really not. So I'll probably steek the armhole as well, and then just knit it as is written from the armhole down. Okay? Okay. So yeah, so I have, it's a shorter version. I think the underarm length is not quite 14 inches. It'll be about 14 inches for me. And then I'm planning on wearing these with things like this. Some of my future Me Made Mays. Okay. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Did I say that's fingering weight? I think I did. The pattern is written for larger hips, smaller waist, larger bust, so it has waist shaping in it. In fact, proportion is written for a larger bust than, or hip, because this clearly means hip and this clearly means bust, right? A larger hip measurement than bust measurement. I highly recommend this pattern. She did scale the back pattern for sizes 46 and a quarter through 59. So the back cabling pattern is wider or smaller, depending on what size you would like to make. She has great information on, what was I going to say? Oh, great schematic. Her schematic is very detailed, has all of the information that you could hope to have, and is very clearly presented in both English and metric rulings. And I think that's all I need to say. Oh, it also has many options. Like the pattern is written to be either long sleeve or short sleeved. The back pattern is the same, but you have the option of either doing a portion of the cable pattern the whole length of the torso, or you can take a portion of the cable pattern that happens to be the lacier portion and just do that from like the above the bust up. So I like that there are many options. Ysolda always has a very good pattern. She always has a very well-written pattern. So yay her. And then the last thing I've been knitting on are these these things that have fallen off of their needles. Oh, that's right. You know that's always what's going to happen when you're about to podcast. I've been knitting some tiny washcloths. Especially in the summer months, I feel like I want to wash my face frequently. Like, well, not frequently, but like I like to have an afternoon face washing. And so I find it very handy to make tiny washcloths. And then I just put them in my dish towel drawer and they are on hand. And I have quite a few of them, but over time they seem to just kind of disappear. So I don't know what happens to them. But I made a concerted effort to make a few of those. I also am going to make some for a gift for a friend. I am not sure. This is mystery cotton, this part. These are this Schockenmeyer multicolor, which is 100% cotton. It looks like this. It's like a fun marley thing. This is not the same colorway, but I didn't have a ball band on the other colorway. This yarn is, I'm going to confess, it's like 5 years old or something. I don't even know. It's old. So, but I love these little washcloths. I love them. It's so nice to just be able to like, ooh, and then you just have this much cloth to put in the washing machine. My washing machine is in my mudroom, which is attached to my kitchen. So I just fling them in there for the next load. So this, have one in progress, which is knit with Dishy. I know I've had to have used the Dishy before. I must confess, it is scratchier, but especially for a washcloth, like when you're just like trying to wash off the oils of your face in the afternoon, it's quite pleasant. And it doesn't feel weird to knit with. So I enjoy that quite a lot. You can see that I have super fancy needles that I make these washcloths on. Do you see how fancy I am? Yes, this is in fact a Carbon's double point with a rubber band tied to the end. I tried the like 10-inch needles or 7-inch, right? I think there are 7-inch needles, the shorties, that are regular Singer point needles, but they're still kind of unwieldy and get in the way. I also use a circular needle, like a 16-inch or a 20-inch, but these are my favorites to work with. And again, if you have some, and I knit mine on 3s because I'm a very loose knitter, and I like a washcloth to be very tight, as tightly stitched as I can do comfortably. I just feel like they last longer. They do better when they get wet. They don't stretch out quite as bad as they would if they were a loose gauge. What else do I need to say? This is the grandma's favorite washcloth, but without the yarn over. So I just knit one front and back across until it gets to the size I want. And then on the way up, I knit one, slip, knit across until I get down to the end. So, yes, I enjoy them. I don't know why I don't make them more often. I should make them as gifts for people, but I don't know what's wrong with me. Part of me is like, I don't find that knitting to be terribly pleasant. But then part of me is like, oh, it's done. So it is enjoyable in that way. Okay. So that's the other stuff I've been knitting on. And that is it, y'all. Right? I told you it's not been a ton. That was quite a bit of work on that sweater. I won't lie. We talked last time. It's not been a full 2 weeks. So that's quite a bit of work on that sweater. And plus I've been working on Me Made May of the future. So that's been part of my leisure time as well. So if you don't want to hear about board games, I'll talk to you next time. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 2 board games that I think might be good for summer folks. If you're newer to the podcast, I really enjoy board gaming. We are not heavy strategy board gamers. We're definitely, I prefer medium, borderline medium heavy, but my family really prefers lighter games. Every once in a while I can talk Tova into a crunchier game, but usually she just wants a structured way to interact with me that doesn't require too much brain effort on her part. I'll take what I can get, you know? So anyway, summer coming up, people traveling, tiny humans out of school with maybe a little bit more downtime than they're normally accustomed to. I thought I would just mention these 2. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. Now, this is a game by Stefan Feld, and it is the 3rd iteration of this Castles of Burgundy. So there's Castles of Burgundy, the board game. That's the classic. It's been around for quite some time. There's Castles of Burgundy, the card game, which I have never played. It does get very high rankings. But then there's also Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. So this is the newest version. It is a roll and write version, which means much like Yahtzee, you're going to have dice that are rolled, and then you have a little notebook thing to fill out, a little paper, which I find to be highly satisfying. This game is ages 10 and up. I think if you have an 8-year-old who feels pretty comfortable with board games, that this is not a problem. It is not language dependent. It has a very small amount of math in it. At the end, like when you're scoring, like when you're tallying up your score, but none in the actual gameplay. So I think that's a little high. It says 10 and up, but I would say I would feel comfortable with many 8-year-olds, as long as they're comfortable with playing other board games. Don't maybe bring this one out of nowhere, but it plays in 15 to 30 minutes. I think that's pretty generous. And then I've never seen this before. I don't know if this is something that Ravensburger does, but I've never noticed it before. In the little box where they tell you like how many players it supports and the time level and things like that, it has this little brain, and it's 1 out of 10. I think that's brilliant. I don't know why more manufacturers don't do that. But yes, this is a very light game. It's, definitely like Yahtzee level. In fact, it's easier than Yahtzee because you don't have to know what a straight is, or like for kids. Like kids don't understand what a straight is or a flush or anything like that. So you don't have to have any of that knowledge to do this game. So I think that's why it's pretty family friendly. The game comes with little pencils. You get your golf pencils. It comes with 5 dice. And it comes with these little roll and write game boards. So the package has, I don't know how many it has, but it has a good chunk of them. And they are double-sided. And they're very clear. I mean, maybe it would be easier if they were slightly larger if you have any sort of vision issues, but we've never had trouble with the size of them. They seem to be a good compact size. The great thing about this game is it has very small footprint. You can actually play it in a car. And while it says you can play with only 1 to 5 people, you can play with as many people as you want. Yeah. And there's certain, like, you're trying to get all of a certain color covered, and that might be more complicated the more people you have, because more people are likely to get there at the same time. But really, you could play with 8 people. I don't see why you couldn't. But you just need someplace to roll dice, and conveniently, you can just roll them right in this box lid. So you could literally just play it in the car, as long as somebody has a lap that's big enough to support this box. If you're playing it in a car, it might be challenging if they're really little people, the younger end, because you do have to be able to remember like what dice come up. Okay, so that might be helpful to visually see. But theoretically, for example, the other day, Tova's bus, we got the phone call that your bus is 30 to 40 minutes late. Please keep in mind that even if you receive this message, your bus may arrive on time. Which means normally we would have to be waiting for the bus for an hour, which is ludicrous, because we wait for the bus like in a busy street, because it's at the foot of our actual street that we live on. So we decided what we would do is just go out on our porch so that we could see the street, and we would play this game. Now, she had never played it before, so I was able to teach her the game, and we completed it in probably 15 minutes. So the 15 to 30 minutes, I think, is more than generous. Maybe it was 20 minutes, but... And really all it is like you completing this little score pad, and there's rules about how you do it, and you get like little bonuses, and I can change the color of a dice, or I can change the number on a dice. And it's pretty basic, very enjoyable. It's great if you have different levels of like age ranges, or what am I trying to say? Capability levels, because yes, while the game is written to be scored against your opponent, it's very easy to keep these little guys and or make a record of it and put it in the box of your score the last time, and just try to play to better your score. It's also very easy to play a few rounds and to work out what basically a handicap would be for an older player. Tova can get discouraged if we play several games and she doesn't win them. I don't like to let her win games because I enjoy the crunchy thinking of games. And this is not so much crunchy thinking, but you know what I mean? Like, I enjoy trying to do my best. So one of the things that we do to get around that, some games you can't do it. Like some games are race games or things like that. But one of the things we frequently do is either handicap something, or again, try to play against a prior score to see if we can just do better than we did the last time. So it was very enjoyable in that way. So we've played it. I mean, it definitely does not have infinite replayability, but it's a nice, and did I mention that the MSRP is $15? So it's a good price point. I mean, that's like what, a movie ticket and a half? I think you'll get that much value out of it. So that's Castles of Burgundy. And then the next one I want to talk about is Honshu. Now this one's MSRP is $25, I believe, but still, again, 2.5 movie tickets. And I think you'll get at least that much enjoyment out of it. Now, this one still has a small box, but the footprint of your playing area does need to be bigger. And in fact, it needs to be stable. So it's not something that you can necessarily, I would not try to play it like on a floor. I would not try to play it in the wind or even on a picnic table because of the different warbliness. You definitely need a good flat surface without air currents. But this game, let me give you the basic info. This game is ages 8 and up. Now, I think that's a little bit ambitious for an 8-year-old. Now, an 8-year-old could definitely play the game, but the strategy of it might be a little challenging. So take that with what again, if you can just play against previous scores or things like that, then that's a great way to get around that. But the concept itself is quite easy. But the strategy is a little bit crunchier than, for example, the Castles of Burgundy. It's 2 to 5 players and plays in about 30 minutes. And it combines card drafting. So like you'll get a hand of 6 cards. And, well, I won't go into the details of it. But there's a little bit of card drafting that happens. Meaning you don't get your hand and that's it. Like you go back and forth with a person. There's also a small amount of bidding. Basically the person who gets the highest, the cards are all numbered like this, right? So the person who puts the highest card out gets to choose of the piles that are available, so they get to have first pick. But it's not like a bidding, like that doesn't feel like a really super intense strategy. I mean, you could make it more strategic if you wanted to, but the way we play it never feels like it's like, because usually any card you can play with, some of them just are more beneficial than others. But basically what you're doing in the game is creating your own little feudal community. And you're doing that with these cards. Now, instead of it being a tile laying game, which you may have seen before, where you're just butting them up against each other, the reason that they are tiles, or that they are cards versus tiles, is that the way the game is written, you must overlap your kingdom. So no matter how much you love this card, you're probably going to have to cover part of it up during some of the game. You don't have to. It could be the one that's not covered up at all, but likelihood is. So with each card that you lay down, you're making decisions about, okay, what part of this card do I not need? You're trying to match up these different terrain types to get your most advantageous scoring. But it's pleasant, right? There's no rules about how much you can cover up. As long as at least one square, you can't do this, but as long as at least one square is showing, you're okay. So, you may have this, or you may have this, or you may have this, or you may have this. Okay? So it's very satisfying. It's like, oh, where do I put it? Do I put it here? Do I put it there? And the card manipulation can be slightly tedious feeling. One of the reasons I'm hesitant about the 8-year-old is that it very much matters how you lay your cards on top of one another. And it is very easy to jostle your playing surface and disrupt how your cards are laid down. It's definitely not like a stacking game where it's really precarious, but one arm across the table to reach for a drink or something and your feudal kingdom is ruined. So just to be aware, if you have a real fidgety human, that could be problematic. And also, as your card, you have a total of 12 cards in your kingdom. So as you can imagine, as you get further and further, they get more complicated how they overlap. So you might be putting them on top of this one, but underneath this one, and you might, So the dexterity could be an issue for some younger players, or again, if you have just dexterity issues in general. That said, I do think the reason they have the age limit lower is that you can play the game. The rules are very easy. The rules are literally you put a card on top of a card. Keep doing that. But there's you can do a lot more strategizing than that. So it can be fun for both younger players who maybe are not as interested in the strategy, but are just interested in making a cool little kingdom out of their cards. And then for players who are more into that strategy element, it is still there. It's available to them to access. So I think in that way, it's a good card game for multiple ages of folks, or multiple gameriness of gamers. Now, of course, you're supposed to be scoring against each other, and that can be problematic. Like if you have an issue with one of you always taking away the score. But again, there is a scoreboard included with your game. And so it's very easy to keep track of your score over time so that you can try to beat your previous score rather than try to beat your opponent's score. So yeah, that's all I need to say. So yeah, the game itself is quite small. You literally, you don't even need the scoreboard or score pad. It's just there for convenience. But this is the actual game itself. So it's very easy to take, but as I said, you do need to have a stable playing surface. So there is a slight limitation in that way. But I highly recommend it. We've found them both to be very enjoyable. Castles of Burgundy dice is, I would say, is lighter than this one, but they're both still very casual games. If you are a person who has trouble learning new games, they both have YouTube videos in the universe that will show you. I'm pretty sure Honshu does. Pretty sure it does. But definitely Castle of Burgundy. In fact, there is a YouTube video, which I will try to link in the show notes if I don't forget, that actually has a play-along teaching version. So because of the way it's set up, you can actually play with somebody remotely. You're just both playing off of the same dice. So it has a play-along version where the person who is teaching you how to play the game is actually playing a game with you. So that's a great way if you have trouble learning different styles of games, or if you're newer to learning these more modern board games. But yeah, okay, I think that's enough. That is all for this week. I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.